Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Anne Charles joining me today. Hi Anne.
Hi.
So, a little bit about Anne. Anne's a USA Today best-selling author, and she writes spicy, character-driven stories full of mystery, comedy, adventure, suspense, romance, and supernatural mayhem. When she's not dabbling in fiction, she's arm wrestling with her two kids, attempting to seduce her husband, and arguing with her sassy cats. So, thanks, Anne, for joining us. Just wondering if you want to start off by telling us a bit about your books.
Sure. Okay. Well, I have five different ongoing series that I'm juggling, and sometimes I'm not juggling very well, especially as I continue to get older and my kids are a little, everything just it gets a little more frantic. But anyway, I have five different series, and most of them deal with supernatural as well as humor, mystery, and all the good stuff, and romance mixed in. One of the series does not have supernatural. It's more kind of an action adventure treasure hunt type of story, and that's got some romantic suspense in it as well. So that series is the Jackrabbit Junction Mystery Series, and it's set here in southeastern Arizona, down with all the big cacti and all the other fun stuff that's down there, and has some crazy names like Dance of the Winnebagos, In Cahoots with the Prickly Pear Posse, Twisty Tortoise Tussles, which is about to be released this month. So I have fun with the titles on that series because there's a lot of humor in these
Yeah.
stories. And I draw mainly, I don't write like serial mysteries. I write more character driven, as is in my bio, meaning it's about the characters as much as the mysteries, and their growth in the story and the funny things they get themselves into. And the same goes for the other series. One of my best-selling and the biggest series to date is the Deadwood Mystery Series, and that's won me several awards. And that is, I need to start writing book 13 later this fall. So
Wow.
that's one of the bigger ones. It's a contemporary, and it has supernatural, and again, mystery, humor, romance, all the stuff. I'm a genre mixer. In other words, I can't pick a team. I have to mix it all
Yeah.
together because I think that's more fun
Yeah.
for me as a writer. And that is key. If I'm having fun writing, then I think it comes across on the page, and you'll have fun reading. If we share a sense of humor. The other two, there's a archaeological mystery series that again has supernatural and all kinds of action adventure in it, and that's the Dig Site series. And then there's a series I write with my husband called the Deadwood Undertaker series, which is a prequel set in the 1870s gold rush times to the big Deadwood mystery series. So there's some crossover supernatural characters, which is really fun. To have supernatural crossing over, not just characters living and breathing. A lot of my series do have crossovers. They're all connected into one, Anne's world. So it's kind of fun if you read one and you like, that series, and you try another one, you'll see, people pulled over, names mentioned, all that kind of stuff. And the final series are novellas, and it's a crazy AC Silly Circus series. They're novellas. The first one was written to be part of a Kindle World group, and then they folded the Kindle World series things they did. So I got the rights back to this novella, which has shapeshifters, which is different for me. And then I wrote the second in that series. And I plan to eventually write more in all my spare time. So
And
I
all
think I
your
need to
spare
shift.
time.
The kids got to go to college.
Yeah.
Yeah, get them out of here, and then just be my husband and the cats, and then maybe I'll have more time to write, a bunch more stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the intro to my world.
And I have to say that I read In Codes with the Prickly Pear Posy, and yeah, really enjoyed it. It is quite fun, and
Oh, good.
some interesting characters.
Well, and that one has the crossover, and I mentioned on the back cover from the Deadwood series of Natalie, who is the best friend of the heroine in the other big series, and a cop named Cooper and his crazy Uncle Harvey, which is a huge. Harvey is a huge hit over in the main Deadwood Mystery series. They love him. So it was really fun to bring them down to Arizona and have them mixing with Natalie's cousins. So again, it's back to that character driven. And I say all along, my goal with these are not to, twist it so much you can't figure out, who done it, that kind of thing. My goal is to give you a fun ride, a fun read, something that makes you smile and laugh and takes you away from the craziness of your regular life into the craziness of the characters' lives and enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, and I've got lots of questions about your series and all the different series you've got going on. And are you writing more than one at a time? How do you do that?
I wish I was a genius and could write them all at the same time and make progress. But in reality, my brain says one at a time, get in line, the other rest of you get in line. Now, on the series I co-write with my husband, the Deadwood Undertaker series, he and I work on that together. And for example, while I was writing book 6 of the Jackrabbit series, he's been writing the first draft of the 4th book in that series, which is called The Backside of Hades. And so we're just about ready to switch. We timed this out perfectly. I'd like to say we plan it all like this all the time, but it just really worked out that I'm wrapping up Twisty Tortoise Tussles, which is book 6, and it gives me time to step in and do my part in The Backside of Hades. Otherwise, I can only write one book at a time. And that's probably why I'm not as fast as many writers who really, kick them out. But my brain will only play in one sandbox at a time. It's just really stubborn that way.
And how do you keep track of all the characters?
Well, long ago, at an early book signing, I think I had 3 or 4 books out. I had this wonderful reader come up to me, and she's like, I'm not really here for you. I'm here for that author over there, but I've read your books and I really enjoyed them. And I love it. And did you know that you changed so-and-so's eye color between book 2 and 3? And I went, oh, geez. And that's something early on as a writer you learn, you really got to keep track of details because she caught it. I mean, it was enough that she caught it. And she said, I enjoy keeping track of things like these. Would you like to work with me and we could work together on building kind of a database to keep track of all your characters and plots and all that? And I was like, I've been waiting for you to show up. I've been sacrificing chickens and goats and everything else to the writing gods, saying, please send someone to help me with this. And so since then, that was around 2013, 2012. Since then, she's been helping me keep track. So she'll take a book as I write it before it goes, public, and she'll go through and start adding it to this big OneNote, Microsoft OneNote file that we have. And she'll just keep adding, and she does such a wonderful job, including like a synopsis of what happens in the book, chapter by chapter synopsis, character eye colors, cars, perfume, smells, favorites. So it's a real boon to help me go back and make sure, because anyone who reads a series or watches a series on television knows that consistency is so important. If you're binging and you change something major and there's no reason, as a viewer or a reader, I'm like, whoa, you screwed that up. Wait a second. And it pulls you out. So you want to be in the story at all times. So I do take that very serious. The consistency is super important to me.
Yeah, I can imagine with, like you said, all the characters and interlocking between the different series. But that's interesting what you said about this person who helps you with that. I haven't heard of an author having someone like that. What do you call her role?
She actually has a business now where she does this, and it's Your Story. I think it's Your Story Keeper. And I just call her my backup brain.
Yeah.
Because she's so many times in the midst of writing a story, I have to send her a message saying, hey, didn't this happen in one of the previous books? And do you remember which books? Because I have a memory of something. But, when you're writing this many stories, and the 6th book in the Jackrabbit will be the 30th book for me alone. If I include the ones I co-write with my husband, it'll be we're going on 34.
Yeah,
so
wow.
It's a lot of story, and I actually think I remember the story and the characters better than real life memories now. Everything's getting jumbled in real life, but in the story I remember, hey, this happened before, you know.
Yeah.
So it does get to be quite a lot, and I need help.
And tell me a bit about writing with your husband. How does that work?
Oh, it's, you know, we've each book, this is, like I said, it's our fourth novel, but it's the fifth in the series because we wrote a Christmas story for this series, and it was a novella. But we've been trying out different things with every book. I mean, it all comes out sounding the same, but behind the scenes, we're using different processes to try to make it as smooth as possible for us. Like I said, he's busy working on the first draft now. We brainstorm together, we plot the story together, we get the ideas, and then we'll kind of structure it together, talk about what we want it to feel like, what's the theme, you know, that we need to have each scene kind of reaching toward. And then as he starts writing, we'll brainstorm, you know, if he hits a wall and says, okay, you know, what do we want to do with this? And because it's tied in so much with my Deadwood Deadwood Mystery series, with the supernatural creatures that I created in that, we really have to talk a lot so that he doesn't change something that I have already established in the world. Because, you know, you make rules for your supernatural world. So we'll talk about that and ways to work things around it. And then he'll go back and write away and come up with all this great stuff. And when he's finished with the first draft, then he hands it over to me. And that's when I go through and start, you know, anything where I think one of my things that I'm good at is storyline and remembering, okay, here was what we had last time, and we have to carry this storyline through, you know, and keeping track of those nitty gritty type of things. So one of my jobs is often to read the books ahead of time from the previous books and go through and make sure everything lines up right. And if not, we have to adjust. I get to play with Clementine, who's the heroine of that series, I love her. She's like 6'1" or 2, big, strong, you know, she's a supernatural, she's what we call a slayer. So, I mean, she's human, but a human hybrid. And so it's really fun because I'm 5'4" on a good day. And, you know, I struggle doing yoga. So to get to be a big strapping, you know, and she's Viking, you know, comes from that kind of type of folks. So she's a lot of fun to go inside her head and be part of her. So I get to play with her as well as just go through and see. And he's so funny, my husband. I'll be reading along in the story when I'm getting, you know, just getting into it to see what he did. And we'll come to a part and, you know, maybe it's a little romancy. And instead of writing the romance part, he'll just say, oh, you know, it's something fun, like, and he smooches her all over right here, you know, and he's doing it just for me because that's what I do. I write the romance, you know, because I just love romance. So anyway, we have a lot of fun with what he'll put in the parentheses in the story that, you know, he'll put in there just to play, you know, mess with me and have fun.
No, it sounds like you both have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and when we're done, we read it together out loud. He's at the computer, I'm sitting there reading it, and we go through it out loud, every chapter, word by word, arguing if we disagree with the way something should be, working it out. So in the end, it's not so much as his voice and my voice running along. It's more of a blending of our voices, I think, kind of harmonizing. So it's kind of fun. And I've had my longtime fans saying, I can't tell what he's writing and what you're writing. And I said, good, that's the way it should be then.
And does he write on his own as well, like his own books as well, or?
He had something before this all started. He's always been part of this with me. He's usually been more behind the curtain with formatting and doing the uploading of the books, because you got to get it all in different, you know, and fill out the dashboards, as we call it, behind the scenes. And he does graphic arts. He takes my brother is my cover artist and illustrator. All the books have illustrations. And so my brother does those. And then my husband takes them and formats as needed for the cover. We take it in pieces, and then my husband will create the cover with that using graphic art software. So it's really a conglomeration of all that. But this series was the first time that he kind of came out into the front in the limelight. And it had been an idea. We were watching some Western, and I said, have you ever seen a female Undertaker in all these old Westerns we've watched? And we were like, oh no, we started talking about that. And I said, I just love the idea of this female Undertaker who, is not what she seems. And he said, he loved it too. And he goes, I'd love to try my hand at that, to write with you. And I said, let's do it, because I don't have time to do 5 series on my own. 4 is hard. 3 is, ideally it's 2, but I do like to mix it up for myself, because if I keep writing the same series, I'm going to get bored, and that will show on the page. So I get to switch families, and change around, which makes it fun.
Yeah, well, and that's I was just going to ask you a question about writing series. When you're writing a series, how do you keep things fresh for both yourself and your readers?
One of the things that I do try to do, when I start the next book, so I'm for example, book 6 that I'm just wrapping up here for the Jackrabbit series, I will read through the past, the previous books, which with that Deadwood mystery series is a real pain, because that's 12 big books of reading.
You'll read the whole.
And I'll be honest, nowadays I skim the first book.
Okay.
Because it's like I've read this thing so many times. But I will go through all those notes I told you about that the World Keeper does, and get myself, make sure I can see all the plot lines. So I'll go through each of them to kind of get a feel, because there's a series arc that I'm working toward. And then what I'll do is try to come at each book with a different theme, and I'll do different behind the scenes techniques. For example, In Cahoots with the Prickly Pear Posse that you read, book 5 of the Jackrabbit, I had seen this wonderful, funny, quirky, new adult movie called Scott Pilgrim, I think Battles the World or something like that. Anyway, and I loved the way they transitioned in the movie between scenes. So they would start one in one scene, and then they would transition, and all of a sudden you were in a different scene, but the conversation was smooth between them, like he was just saying one sentence and we'd switch. So I wanted to try that in a book and see if I could end a chapter in one way and then start it with the same conversation basically, but a different character in a different setting, and pick up where we left off. So it was fun to play and do that. And that gives me something as a writer. It gives me a new challenge. And it makes the books, I think, as I experiment and I change themes and I change a lot of behind the scenes, I'm hoping it makes them feel a little bit different as you read each one. So they don't feel, oh, here we are again with the same formula, the same type of thing. So I do try to mix it up that way. And honestly, for me, as much as you, because again, if I get bored writing it, then the humor's not going to come across right. So I have to be laughing as I type some of these crazy scenes in order to make them real, I think.
And what about feedback from readers? Is there anything you might be able to share with us that maybe readers surprised you, or?
Well, I've from the get-go, I've always been, one of my goals was, like I think I said before, was making light, making people have something to smile about in tough times. I've had some stuff in my life that wasn't always the best, and I think that's where I draw on the humor from, is how to keep going in spite of the crap show that's going on in your life, and find your smile, because I think laughter and a better attitude helps you get through this. So that was something early on I was aiming for, and just a lot of the feedback with when I get fans that email me or put it on Facebook, favorite author, I've read this series 6 times, 7 times, I just keep rereading it. It's such an honor, and again, at the same time, it's it's kind of like, Anne, don't screw this up. You have this wonderful relationship with these readers. Don't let them down. Keep going forth, and keep changing it a little just to keep it different. But mainly those who are really into it and love it, it's been so wonderful. I didn't expect that, and I feel like I've been, in my own way, this is a kind of a thing of, will we become friends? Could we be friends? Because if we share the sense of humor, then I think we could hang out at a bar or wherever, a restaurant, and have a good time together. And I'm always, it's like my little secret way of trying to find new friends in this world.
And what about what you like to read yourself? Is there anything you maybe have been reading lately that you'd like to recommend to us?
You know, before I started really writing and doing this for a career, I used to read like crazy, all across the board. But now with writing and trying to get out 3 books a year or more, if possible, it really curtails my reading. I tend to watch movies more because it's a quick read kind of a thing, and I'm a visual learner. So like I said, how I watched that movie and I liked the transition technique and I wanted to put it in, I do that. I'll watch a movie and try to find new ways of, okay, how would I do what they just did on screen on the page that could make it fun? How can I do that? So I do have tried and true favorites that I go back to in between or during. Cheryl Rivas, she writes historical romances. Her character growth is amazing. And since I really like to build character-based stories, I'm a big fan of hers because the way she will build the character up and you'll fall in love with that person inside and out, not like just romantically. You just, you like them. Another one, I do like historical romances, which is so totally away from pretty much from what I write. But Tessa Dare is funny and sexy and great at writing historical romances. I eat up everything she writes. At the same time, I like Westerns. I like old Louis L'Amour. I like Zane Grey, some of those old Westerns. I still enjoy those. And I love Stephen King and some of the morbid stuff too. So it's a real weird combination. If you think about that. Variety. Western horror and romance, historic. But I tend to just go to the books, most books I've read. Now I do have a lot of author friends. So the new reading I get to do, I have a good friend, Christy McCaffrey, who writes historical Westerns as well as more contemporary action adventure. I'll read hers because we exchange that and we help each other. So I get to read her new books and I love her. She's a great author. So, and I'll do readings for blurbs to give, some kind of, we call them blurbs, cover copy, and I'll do that. So I just don't, I'm envious of you and those in the book club that get to just, you read all the time. And my brother was just, he went to Europe and he said, I've got a 10-hour flight. Oh my gosh. And I said, you are so lucky. I would love to have 10 hours alone with books and just read for 10 hours straight and go away. That would be just heaven for me.
And you're obviously very, very busy with your writing, and I'm sure you're with your life as well. How do you plan? Do you have like a set amount of writing you plan to do every day, or how do you plan your day?
So yes, writing these days for most of us, not all. I'm sure there's those people that have these amazing publishers that do it all and all they have to do is write. That's not my life at all. For most of us, writing is 50% marketing and everything else and 50% writing. So for example, right now I'm in the editing phase. So I'm waiting for edits to come in. So I've spent the last 3 days torturing myself with bookkeeping from the last 4 months that set aside and taking care of all that, as well as prepping the marketing. I'm doing all kinds of getting ready to start promoting this book. But when I'm actually writing a book, I will aim for 2,000 words a day. I don't know, that's a couple pages, a few pages, maybe half a chapter. And just some days I'm at 1995 and I'll write, this book seems like crap, but I made it to 2,000, right? And other days it just flows and I'll write 3,000 and it's great. But if I do that 2,000 a day for me, because I do have kids at home and I want to spend time with them and a husband and we do stuff, and housewives, that's a good amount for me, 2,000 a day.
And do you ever
not at a certain time. Sorry, I'm not regimented.
So
like
no
people, it's like I have till midnight to get 2,000 words done. So.
And do you have a favorite place to write and maybe favorite snack or drink while you're writing?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so snack or drink we'll come back to. That's a problem for me.
Mm.
Favorite place to write? Really, I have a laptop, so I move around the house. And right now we're building on trying to build a mother-in-law into our outer building where my office is. So I'll be sharing that with my mother-in-law. But so my office is out of order at this point. We're in the summer here in Arizona. There's no
Mm.
electricity out there. There's no
Oh,
way I'm
wow.
sitting
Must
out
be
there.
hot.
So I go all over the place in the house. Sometimes I want nicely kick my daughter out of her bedroom and say, "Can I please have your bedroom to write today?" and shut the door. And you can go do whatever you want on the big TV out in the living room.
Mm.
And she'll let me. Sometimes I have a chair in my closet that I'll sometimes just go sit in the closet with the lights off and and write in there wherever I can, at the dining room table, wherever I can. And sometimes it's like late at night and I'll say, "Aren't you going to bed?" to my kids. They're teenagers. It's like, "Go to bed. I need to write." So anywhere. As for the food thing, so I am such a, as I write, I want to be eating something all the time. And you'll see in my books, if you read them, there's a lot of food mentioned. And that's because usually during the writing process, I'm on some kind of a diet, because if I don't, I will eat us out of house and home and I'll look like Jabba the Hutt before I'm done, sitting there all the time writing. So I have tons of different foods. I have fun with foods. It's not like I'm a cook, because I really can't cook. My husband is amazing and I just eat whatever he makes. But I have put so many foods, and I didn't realize it till several years in. Fans started saying, "Could you please share the recipes for all these dishes and things you've come up with?"
Yeah.
And so we actually did make a few years ago. A couple fans, friend fans, came up to me and wanted to help make the cookbook. They would test all the recipes. They would do. So we did. We made an Ann Charles cookbook, and then with each recipe, you could see where it came from. And then we took also from fans worldwide, if they had a favorite recipe they wanted to share. We did that, and it was a limited time thing. They're not for sale out there. It's just more of a, this is a Christmas present. You can get this as well as an apron and a hat. And we called it Moon the Cook, Ann Charles cookbook, so yeah, I really have an issue with eating. And so I'm constantly, I tell my husband, I wish they made pig's ears that humans could just chew on. He's like, "Really?" But yeah, if there was something like that I could just, that wouldn't break my teeth, it'd be really helpful.
And I've got a question from Belinda, who's watching. She says, with so many books, do you have a favorite character?
Oh boy, it's hard. That's really hard. When I'm in each book series writing, I do feel like there are certain characters that I have fun with, more fun on screen than with others, of course. And Violet is the heroine, Violet Parker, of the Deadwood Mystery series, the biggest, the longest series I have. And I do love being in Violet's head. She has the funny, crazy thoughts. And in that series, we're only ever in Violet's head. It's a first person. So it's so much fun to get in there. And, I've got to try to figure out what other people are thinking, just like in real life, we don't get to hear what's going on in their heads. So there's a lot of speculation and worry. And did I do that wrong? Are they mad at me? So that's kind of fun with Violet in particular. In the Arizona series, the Jackrabbit Junction series with the three sisters, each sister is really fun for me. I think the third book in the Jackrabbit series, The Great Jackalope Stampede, is one of my favorites. It was when the oldest sister, Ronnie, was introduced, and she's just coming off a horrible, horrible experience with her ex-husband who was doing illegal things, and she was, the FBI were after her. They were after her for a while, constantly, drilling her with questions and exposing all these things about her private life. And so by the time we get to the start of that book, that's already happened. And she's come in where she used to be this society type of, she was playing the society woman and hosting parties. And she's been stripped down to the bone. And now she doesn't have a penny. Her jewelry that she just tried to pawn, she finds out was fake. She thought it was real all these years. So, and then she gets pulled over by the sheriff of the county for speeding. And she's just at her wit's end. And then she, tries to bribe the sheriff with some of the fake jewelry, which isn't a good idea for the sheriff. So it just, I love that story because it's really a character that's been knocked to her knees and she has to build herself back up. And she's got some terrible threats coming at her at the same time, you know, as part of the mystery. So that one's, I do love that. And that's Veronica, they call her Ronnie. But in that series, Claire was the first heroine, you know, of the three sisters, Claire, Kate, and Ronnie. And I do love Claire. She's a handy woman. She's always building things. She's a lot of fun.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me. It's been great talking to you.
Yes, it was fun sharing all that with you guys.
No, it's been great. And thanks for those who joined in to watch. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.